Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Family Style Meal Service with Children in the Child and Adult Care Food Program training. During this training today, we're going to refer to the Child and Adult Care Food Program as the CACFP. And before we get started, I want to thank you all for submitting questions that you sent in during registration of this webinar. We have incorporated information throughout today's webinar to answer many of them, and then we're also going to answer quite a few of them at the end of today. So here are our speakers for today's webinar. You're going to hear from me, Katie Hallis, first. I'm a registered dietitian, and I work on team nutrition at USDA's Food and Nutrition Service. And then next, you're going to hear from Jill Ladd. She is with our policy team and also a registered dietitian with USDA's Food and Nutrition Service. And then you're going to hear from Jessie Coffey, who is the director of the Whole Child Program at the Nebraska Department of Education. And here are our learning objectives for today. So by the end of this webinar training, you're going to be able to identify 2 free resources that can be used to train CACFP operators or families on Family Style Meal Service. You will be able to name 3 benefits of incorporating Family Style Meal Service at mealtime, and then also apply Family Style dining strategies when offering meals and snacks to young children. Today's webinar will highlight new resources about Family Style Meal Service in the CACFP that were recently developed by USDA's Team Nutrition Initiative. And if you're not familiar with Team Nutrition, that's okay, because I'm going to tell you about it now. The Team Nutrition Initiative supports child nutrition programs, such as the CACFP, by providing training and technical assistance to food service professionals that prepare meals for the program. We provide the program with technical resources to support healthy school and childcare environments. And we also develop nutrition education resources that help children learn about agriculture and become self-sufficient in making informed food choices. USDA Team Nutrition developed an operator booklet recently titled Family Style Meal Service with Children in the Child and Adult Care Food Program. This resource helps answer questions about preparing for Family Style Meal Service, following requirements during Family Style Meal Service, supporting children at mealtime, and then it also gives the user the opportunity to practice their understanding of what they've read in the operator booklet. So this booklet is a go-to resource for implementing Family Style Meal Service in the CACFP. So feel free to pull up the operator booklet now. You can access it at the URL shown on the slide, or go ahead and scan the QR code on the slide. In addition to the operator booklet, we also have 3 classroom posters. Those are available in both English and in Spanish. And these can be used as discussion tools teachers can use in their classrooms to introduce the steps to Family Style Meal Service, rules for Family Style meals, and then there's also a poster with sample scripts and conversations that can be had at mealtime with children. We've also developed a ready-to-go presentation slide deck that you all can go ahead and download and use yourselves to help you train your own staff on Family Style Meal Service in the CACFP. And we have original photographs depicting Family Style Meal Service in childcare and after-school settings to use in your own training materials or promotional activities. These resources were developed with previous Team Nutrition resources on this topic in mind, as well as Nebraska's resources, which you're going to hear about in just a little bit from Jessie. And then we've also developed these resources with informal feedback we've received from customers over the years. These resources were also reviewed by registered dietitians, Head Start staff, childcare content specialists, and occupational therapists, and state agencies, and more. Okay, so what is Family Style Meal Service? So it is a type of meal service where children can help set the table, serve themselves from bowls, plates, and/or pitchers on the table, and talk with others at mealtime. Family Style Meal Service is optional in the CACFP, but please note some programs may be required to offer Family Style meals due to other funding they might have outside of federal funding that they receive or due to local policies. So there are many benefits to serving meals family style. Children can eat without pressure, so eating when they feel hungry and stopping when they feel full. It gives them an opportunity to practice their fine motor skills, strengthening the small muscles in their hands and fingers while learning to serve and feed themselves. It helps them build self-esteem and confidence as they learn to serve themselves. It allows them to develop healthy eating behaviors, such as trying new foods and making food choices. It gives them an opportunity to practice their social and language skills by talking with other children and teachers at the table. And it gives them an opportunity to get to know other children and teachers. Eating together can give children a sense of belonging and is valued in many cultures. But if you cannot fully implement family style meal service, for an example, in a public health emergency, aspects of this style of meal service can still be used. We can help children continue to practice language and social skills by encouraging conversation and using good table manners, even if the food is pre-plated. Okay, so let's pause and answer this question. So I want you to think about it. What aspects of family style meal service do you see in this picture? I'll give you a few seconds to think about it and look at the picture and see what makes it different. What do you think makes it different than other types of meal service you might see? Great, thank you. So in this picture, you might have noticed that it includes socializing between children and adults, passing of serving bowls, children serving themselves, and also child-size utensils and equipment. All are wonderful aspects and benefits of family style meal service. But a quick note before we move on, I do want to mention that special equipment for family style meal service is not required. However, most servingware and dishes are made for adults, which can be too big or heavy for young children. So if possible, try to buy supplies that are child size and unbreakable. And check with your sponsoring organization or state agency about using CACFP funds to buy equipment to help get you started. So let's dive a bit more into the content of the operator booklet and that training slide deck I mentioned. So the first section in these resources includes preparing for family style meal service. It answers three main questions. What supplies do I need to start? How can I prepare children before starting? And what can I do to help staff and parents and guardians before starting? So we're going to answer two questions that are shown in yellow on the screen during today's webinar. But I did want to mention that the first question of what supplies do I need to start is also found in that operator booklet and training slides that are available on our Team Nutrition website. So let's go ahead and answer the question of how can I prepare children before starting? So we can prepare children before starting family style meal service by talking to them about how meals will be served. Start by telling children that their classroom will start to serve meals in a different way. The food will be on tables in shared bowls and plates, and children will take the food from the shared bowls and plates and put it on their own plates. Milk may be available in pitchers for children to pour from and serve themselves. USDA Team Nutrition has 3 posters to support family style meal service in the classroom or at your site. They include rules for family style meals, which is shown on the slide, let's eat family style, and let's talk at mealtime. So the Let's Eat Family Style poster shows the steps to family style meal service, and it can serve as a visual aid when introducing family style meal service to children. Then we also have the Let's Talk at Mealtime poster, which shares prompts, phrases, and conversation starters that childcare providers can use at mealtime to support healthy eating and social development. All posters can be accessed on the Team Nutrition website at the URL on the slide, or you can go ahead and scan that QR code. So another way to prepare children for family style meal service is by providing opportunities for children to learn through play. Your childcare site can add child-size serving spoons, tongs, and pitchers to play areas. And this will allow children to strengthen their fine motor skills, skills like grasping, pinching, and picking up small objects that they need to serve themselves. For example, children can practice pouring liquid from a pitcher into a cup at the water table, scooping cotton balls with a measuring cup and putting them in a small bowl, and using child-sized tongs to move pretend food or even just pieces of yarn from one plate to another. Also, have children practice setting the table using placemats, plates, cups, forks, and spoons in the play area. Another way to prepare children before starting family-style meal service is by having the children practice with one meal component before serving all meal components family-style. For example, when starting with one component, children can pass around dinner rolls for the grains component while you pre-plate the rest of the meal components. Your childcare site may also want to begin this style of meal service with a snack rather than other meals, such as breakfast, lunch, or supper. A snack requires less meal preparation and tends to include foods that are easier for children to serve themselves. You can begin serving more items family style as children strengthen their skills. And now, what about adults? So how can we help staff and parents and guardians before starting family style meal service? So before starting, a childcare site can support staff by gathering teachers, food service staff, and others to explain this new style of serving meals. If possible, serve a meal or snack during this training to allow staff to practice family style meal service while they're learning. And then in this training, it might be helpful to discuss the following topics, such as the benefits to children, the steps and rules to family style meal service, how to encourage children to try new foods, that food must be offered but does not need to be put on a child's plate, and ways to help children to serve themselves, to learn to serve themselves. All of these topics are covered throughout the operator booklet and in the Family Style Meal Service posters, and you can even use today's training slides to train your staff. These slides and more are already available at the URL and QR code shown on the slide. Another important aspect before starting family style meal service is to assign someone for each classroom to take the required meal count at each mealtime. For childcare centers, meal counts must be taken while children are eating, not before and not after the meal service is over. Also, daily attendance records must not be used in place of meal count records. These records are separate. And before starting family style meal service, it is also always important to communicate with parents and guardians. You can send a message home to let them know that your site will be starting family style meal service. You could even share USDA Team Nutrition's new Nibbles for Health parent newsletter titled Serving Meals Family Style. Feel free to hand it out at pickup time, add it to your own newsletter, or share it on social media and/or classroom apps. And then if you work with food service staff, caterers, or food vendors, let them know you would like to start serving meals family style. Explain that you would like to have food in serving bowls or plates so children can serve themselves. Coordination and communication are always important. Remember to communicate with food service staff about the number of children in each classroom, number of children seated at each table, and the age groups of children being served. If supervising adults are also eating with the children, then be sure to mention that as well. And we're going to talk about supervising adult meals in just a bit. But this coordination with food service really helps ensure that the common serving bowls and plates placed on each table have enough of the required portions for each child seated at that table. And now I'm going to pass this to Jill to talk more about the requirements when serving meals family style. Jill?
Great. Thank you, Katie. During this next section, we're going to talk about following requirements during family style meal service. And we're going to answer a major question. How do I make sure I'm providing enough food for each child? We will be doing some calculations together during this portion of the training, so be sure to have a calculator or your phone handy to participate. Just as a note, we will not be covering accommodating special dietary needs during today's presentation. However, the operator booklet does answer the question, how do I accommodate special dietary needs? It's a requirement to offer the full portion size in the serving bowl or serving plate for each child. To provide enough food for each child, first, you must calculate the minimum amount of food needed for each child at that meal or snack. The operator booklet provides examples for determining how much food to prepare at meals and snacks for children from one or more age groups. We're also going to practice this shortly. Second, the full portion of each meal component must be provided for every child seated at the table in serving bowls, plates, and/or pitchers. And third, all serving bowls, plates, and pitchers must be placed on the table where the children are seated for the meal and snack. Finally, each meal component must be offered to each child at the table. Now, always remember, a child does not need to put the food on their plate or eat the food for the meal or snack to be reimbursable. Role modeling at mealtime is an important piece of family-style meal service. Sit down with the children at mealtime, and if you can, eat the same foods as the children. The supervising adults' meals are not reimbursable, but the expense of extra creditable food produced for meals is an allowable cost. If supervising adults are eating with the children, remember to include them in your calculations for the amount of food to provide. Be sure to check with your sponsoring organization or state agency about using CACFP funds to buy extra food. So I promised that we were going to be doing some math together, and there are going to be 2 steps to follow when determining the total amount of food to provide during meals and snacks to children from a single age group, such as 1 through 2-year-olds. Step 1 is to determine the minimum amount of food needed for each child at that meal or snack. You're going to refer to the meal pattern requirements to identify the minimum portion size that is needed. Step 2 is to multiply the minimum amount of food that you determined through step 1 by the number of children at that meal or snack. You can check out USDA Teen Nutrition's Serve Tasty and Healthy Food in the Child and Adult Care Food Program posters for required minimum amounts of meal components. You can find these by scanning the QR code or using the URL link on the screen. Let's begin with an example where we calculate the amount of food needed for a single age group. So Happy Day Childcare wants to offer diced peaches at lunch to the 2-year-old classroom. This classroom has 12 2-year-olds in class today. The first step is to determine the minimum amount of food needed for each child at that meal or snack. If you're unsure what the required amounts are, remember to check out Teen Nutrition's posters on CACFP meal pattern requirements that we discussed on the previous slide. For today's intents and purposes, I'm just going to tell you the minimum amount of fruit needed at lunch for each 2-year-old is 1/8 of a cup, or 0.125 cups. Next, for step 2, we're going to multiply the minimum amount of food from step 1, so that was 1/8 of a cup, by the number of children at that meal or snack. In this example, the minimum amount of food is 0.125 cups of diced peaches. We're going to multiply 12 children by 0.125 cups of diced peaches, which equals a total of 1.5 cups of diced peaches. Therefore, Happy Day Childcare should provide at least 1.5 cups of diced peaches at lunch for the 12 children. The 1.5 cups of diced peaches can be placed in one serving bowl if all 12 children are sitting at one table, or if they are sitting at more than one table, split the 1.5 cups into smaller bowls that may be easier for children to hold and pass at each table. Now it's time to practice on your own. Calculate the amount of food for a single age group in this example. Building Blocks Childcare practices family-style meal service. They have 7 3-year-olds in attendance today. They want to offer applesauce at breakfast. What is the total amount of applesauce that should be in the serving bowls on the table? Remember, you will need to look up the required minimum amount per child of fruit per breakfast. For today's purposes, I'll provide you with this amount, and it's 1/2 of a cup, or 0.5 cups. So go ahead and take a minute to complete that calculation. I'll give you a minute to work on that independently here. Okay, how many of you got 3.5 cups? If you did, you are correct. So let's walk through that calculation together. The first step is to determine the minimum amount of food that's needed for each child at that meal or snack. In this example, each 3-year-old needs a minimum of a half of a cup or 0.5 cups of fruit, vegetable, or portions of both for breakfast. For step 2, you must multiply the minimum amount of food, 0.5 cups, by the number of children at the meal or snack. So for this example, we have 7 participants. Therefore, 7 times 0.5 equals 3.5 cups. This means that Building Blocks Childcare will need to provide at least 3.5 cups of applesauce at breakfast that day. The 3.5 cups of applesauce can be placed in one serving bowl if all 7 children are sitting at one table, or if they're sitting at more than one table, split the 3.5 cups into smaller bowls that may be easier for children to hold and pass around the table. Just calculating how much food is needed for a single age group, let's talk through the steps for calculating the total amount of food needed from children from different age groups, such as 1 through 2-year-olds and 3 through 5-year-olds, like you might find in a mixed age classroom or in a family daycare home. There are 3 different steps to follow when determining the total amount of food to offer during meals and snacks to children from different age groups. Step 1 is to determine the minimum amount of food needed for children in each age group at that meal or snack. Step 2 is to multiply the minimum amount of food from step 1 by the number of children at that meal or snack separately for each age group. And step 3 is to add the amounts for each age group from step 2 to see the total amount needed to be provided. So let's walk through an example together. Happy Day Childcare wants to offer diced peaches at lunch to a mixed age classroom. This classroom has 6 2-year-olds and 6 3-year-olds. The first step is to determine the minimum amount of food needed for each age group at that meal or snack. In this example, the minimum amount of fruit needed at lunch for each 2-year-old is 1/8 of a cup, or 0.125 cups. The minimum amount of fruit needed at lunch for each 3-year-old is 1/4 of a cup, or 0.25 cups. The second step is to multiply the minimum amount of food by the number of children at that meal or snack separately for each age group. For this example, we're going to multiply 1/8 of a cup, or 0.125 cups of diced peaches by 6 2-year-old children, which equals 3/4 of a cup, or 0.75 cups of diced peaches. Then we're going to take the 1/4 cup, or 0.25 cups of diced peaches multiplied by 6 3-year-olds, which equals 1.5 cups of diced peaches. The third and final step is to add the amounts for each age group that we calculated from step 2 on the previous slide to see the total amounts to provide. We're going to add 0.75 cup for the 2-year-olds to 1.5 cups for the 3-year-olds, which equals 2.25 cups, or 2.25 cups. Okay, it's time to practice on your own. Magical Day Childcare has a mixed age group classroom and practices family style meal service. They have 4 2-year-olds and 4 3-year-olds in attendance today. They are serving fat-free skim milk at breakfast. What is the total amount of milk that they must put in the pitchers on the table? Now remember, you will need to look up the required minimum amount of milk for breakfast for each of the age groups represented in this classroom. For today's purposes, I'll provide you with these amounts. 2-year-olds must be offered 1/2 of a cup, or 4 fluid ounces of milk at breakfast. And 3-year-olds must receive 3/4 of a cup, or 6 fluid ounces of milk for breakfast. Okay, go ahead and take a few minutes to work through this scenario. If you happen to need more time than I'm able to give you right now, and you need more time to work through these calculations, feel free to pause the recording. Okay, so if you calculated 5 cups, you are correct. So let's walk through those steps together. The first step, when calculating the amount of milk needed for different age groups, is to determine the minimum amount of milk needed for children from each age group at that meal or snack. As we stated on the last slide, 2-year-olds must be offered 4 fluid ounces of milk, and 3-year-olds 6 fluid ounces of milk for breakfast. Second step is to multiply the minimum amount of milk that we determined in step 1 by the number of children at breakfast for each child age group. Since there are 4 2-year-olds, we multiply 4 ounces by 4, which equals 2 cups or 16 fluid ounces. Since there are 4 3-year-olds, we're going to multiply 3/4 of a cup or 6 fluid ounces by 4. That equals 3 cups or 24 fluid ounces. The final third step is to add the amounts from each age group that we just calculated in step 1 or step 2 to see the total amount to provide. In this case, 2 cups plus 3 cups is 5 cups. You could also look at this as 16 fluid ounces plus 24 fluid ounces is 40 fluid ounces. That means that Magical Day Childcare must provide at least 5 cups or 40 fluid ounces of fat-free skim milk in the pitchers at breakfast to the mixed age classroom. The 5 cups of milk can be placed in one pitcher, or they can be divided into 2 or more pitchers that may be easier for children to hold, pass, and pour. Great job on those calculations. Next, let's work through some questions using some scenarios that you might encounter when using Family Style Meal Service. Play and Learn Childcare served spinach at lunch and provided the full required minimum amount in the serving bowl for each of the 3 children at the table. Johnny did not put any on his plate. Maya put some on her plate, and Finn put the full amount on his plate. None of them ate everything that they put on their plates. Are all 3 meals reimbursable? If you're thinking yes, then you're correct. All 3 of these meals are reimbursable. The child care site must provide enough food so that each child has the option to take the full minimum serving amount of food if they wish. However, they are not required to take or eat the full amount for the meal or snack to be reimbursable. Let's do another question using a different Family Style Meal Service scenario. During Family Style Meals, if a supervising adult is sitting down and eating with the children, is the supervising adult's meal reimbursable? Okay, the answer to this question is no. Role modeling at mealtime is an important piece of Family Style Meal Service, and supervising adults are encouraged to sit down and eat the same foods with the children at mealtime. However, the supervising adult's meals are not reimbursable. The expense of extra creditable food produced for meals is an allowable cost. If a supervising adult is eating the same foods with the children, enough food must be placed on the table to ensure that all children seated at the table can select a full serving of each component offered, as well as enough food for the supervising adult to eat with the children. Be sure to check with your sponsoring organization or state agency about using CACFP funds to buy extra food. I'm going to turn it back over to Katie now.
Great, thanks, Jill. So during this last section of the operator booklet, this last section we're going to talk about of the operator booklet, we're going to answer 3 questions about supporting children at mealtime. And these questions include, how can I help children learn to serve themselves? How can I encourage good food safety habits? And how can I encourage children to try new foods? And for the sake of time, we're going to show you information from 2 of the 3 questions that are highlighted in yellow on the slide, but all 3 of them can be found in the operator booklet and training slides. So one tip in the How Can I Help Children Learn to Serve Themselves section of the operator booklet is choosing foods for the menu that are easier for children to scoop. So here are a few substitutions to consider that may make it easier for young children to serve themselves and create less mess. So instead of spaghetti noodles, we might want to try macaroni noodles. Instead of thin soups, we might want to try thicker soups. And instead of a whole chicken tenderloin, we could try diced or shredded chicken. And now let's talk about how to encourage children to try new foods by introducing new foods in different ways. Family style meals allow children to choose if and how much food they want on their plate. This gives them more control and may lead to them trying a new food. So you can also encourage children by introducing new foods in different ways and by being a role model. You can introduce a new food outside of mealtime through reading, gardening, and food activities, one at a time, so children are not overwhelmed by all of the options, at mealtime with a food they like, and in taste testing activities outside of mealtime. This may allow children, especially those with sensory challenges, to try a food with less pressure. Okay, so let's review and just think about this last question. What must a site do to claim a reimbursable meal or snack in the CACFP when implementing family style meal service? So you can choose A, B, and or C, and I'll give you a hint that there is more than one answer here. So option A is provide the full portion of each meal component for every child seated at the table in serving bowls and plates. Option B, offer each meal component to each child at the table. And C, force children to take a small portion of every food item. I'll give you a few seconds to think about that. Okay. So if you were thinking A and B are correct, then you are correct. So in order for a site to receive to get a reimbursable meal or snack, you must provide the full portion of each meal component for every child seated at the table in serving bowls and plates, and also offer each meal component to each child at the table. We're never forcing children to take or eat a small portion of food. A child does not need to take or eat all of the food for the meal or snack to be reimbursable. So all of our Team Nutrition materials shared today are available online on our Team Nutrition website. They are available to anybody for free download to anybody who is interested. You can also find a lot of other resources on there for the CACFP, and our website's on the slide there at teamnutrition.usda.gov. I do want to also highlight that Team Nutrition has released hundreds of original photos as part of the Team Nutrition photo collection under the USDA Flickr account. This collection includes over 350 high-resolution, copyright-free photos, and the photos are organized into over 12 albums covering topics such as family-style meal service, food portions, infant nutrition, kids cooking, and more. They are free and can be accessed by anyone on Flickr at the URL shown on the slide here. Team Nutrition does encourage you to use these photos for your own nutrition education and training materials. And then lastly, before I turn this over to Jessie, I want to mention that part of Team Nutrition's work also includes the Team Nutrition training grants, which play an important role in helping state agencies deliver training and nutrition education that supports the USDA child nutrition programs. Each year, a grant is released inviting state agencies, and for the first time actually last year, we also invited school food authorities to apply and work on a specific project. To learn more about those grants, you can scan the QR code and or visit the URL on the screen. And Jessie Coffey, who you're going to hear from next, was part of our 2016 Team Nutrition Training Grant. That grant focused on the implementation and evaluation of nutrition education, meal service training, and environmental changes in schools or childcare sites by 13 state agencies. So she's now going to share more about her work and findings from the work they did through that 2016 grant. Jessie?
Thanks, Katie. Good afternoon, everyone. As Katie mentioned, I work for the Nebraska Department of Education, and I'm here to share a little bit more with you about our Team Nutrition project from 2016. The program was really a collaboration between the Nebraska Department of Education and the University of Nebraska Child, Youth, and Family Program called the EAT Family Style program that was designed to test research of Dr. Dipti Dev on responsive feeding practices through the use of family-style dining services in childcare centers. The Team Nutrition Project was used to fund some formative evaluation, resources and tools, and also identify the usefulness of the resources and materials developed for staff and families to ensure that everything was applicable to a childcare center, to a provider, and also to align with all of the CACFP regulations that you all just learned about, as well as ensuring that there were large components that helped teach CACFP program teachers and administrators about the responsive feeding practices that we all know are best practice. And the USDA materials that Katie highlighted today were not available when we did our project, but I can tell you that they would have been really helpful to ensure that as we were teaching about family style dining, that we were also teaching about ensuring the regulations were all met as well. And the family style dining lessons that were created as part of our research project were really developed as a holistic training for childcare providers, really focused on feeding practices for children 2 through 5. And based on the research and evidence of experts in the field like Ellen Satter, and she really empowers youth to be the ones that get to select the types and quantities of the food that they get on their plates at mealtime and sort of the order in which they eat their food, rather than that being an adult instructed process. So the program is really designed around those mindful feeding practices and also aligned with the family style dining process, and really how the synergy that exists between those two are really a nice opportunity for childcare providers as young children are learning important skills like dexterity, social skills through mealtime conversations, and then positive peer engagement around trying new foods, as well as helping a lot of young children move past that fear of trying something that they haven't seen before. And the ecological design of the Eat Family Style program really does focus on providers in a childcare environment, as well as having elements of support for families, administrators, and then of course, young children. So as you can see on this slide, there are 7 components of the Eat Family Style curriculum, and the curriculum developed in these 7 lessons each have a corresponding online lesson with videos demonstrating skill building activities, worksheets for the children or potentially the teachers if they need to do some of the math in the early days on determining how much food needs to be provided, and then parent tip sheets that allow families to continue to support family style dining practices at home. Each lesson takes about 1 hour for the provider to complete. Most of our providers did this during nap time. Then throughout the lesson, staff view short videos that show them how they apply the knowledge they're learning to the children that they get to work with every day. And so after they learn about the simple strategies, then they're able to have a week of practice in their classroom, trying them out, seeing what worked, seeing what didn't work, and then getting some feedback and help from a coaching model that we used. But also, as Katie highlighted, in the family style meal resources that are available, the EAT program really highlighted those responsive feeding practices as well, making sure that we're not forcing children to eat their foods on their plate, and giving them that power to make decisions about how much and when. The advantages of the family style dining for childcare providers were many. I was actually able to be a coach as part of the project for 2 different sites. And so it was really interesting to hear what worked in one center did not necessarily work in another, but across the intervention, we know that it was really helpful that the project aligned the CACFP standards. That was a big question mark for many folks as they started. They really liked how it highlighted the pleasant meal times, the putting all of the items into family style serving bowls. They actually really realized that that was a big time saver when short-staffed. This also gave teachers an opportunity to communicate with parents about something positive or give parents a resource that they really wanted around eating healthy or trying new foods. They also really enjoyed the free training videos and online resources and scenarios. They enjoyed that the materials were research-based and classroom tested. And many of the folks in the pilot were really appreciative that they were able to test the materials and provide their feedback. Most importantly to the administrators and several of the teachers were the free training credits that they were able to receive through our licensing program in Nebraska. And then learn strategies from the videos to overcome barriers related to the family style service. As you're getting started, barriers are certainly going to come up, and they were able to work through that. And then learn positive feeding strategies that were not simply just applied to this project, but that were able to be extended well beyond the pilot in their initial classroom with kiddos. So kind of to highlight a little bit more about how the intervention worked and how we did collect those feedback from both administrators, teachers across the state, was that we used a 16-week, not incorporated those 7 lessons, on the evidence-based responsive feeding practices for early care and education center professionals. That is the Eat Family Style Dining program. And then our participants were 9 cooperative extension coaches. So I very briefly mentioned that each center was paired with an extension coach, where the coaches helped them problem solve and work through some of the challenges, or even celebrate some of the successes that they had. We were able to have 8 administrators participate, and then 17 teachers. And then we had 216 children, so 3 through 5-year-olds from targeted CACFP centers across Nebraska. And then the design of the program really allowed the administrators and teachers to work, like I mentioned, through that 1-week lesson, using those videos and resources and tools, practice in their classroom, and then meet with the coach to work through any bumps in the road. And then I was a coach. I was able to share successes and challenges from other sites and how they got over that, and that was also very beneficial. And many of those recommendations have been created of videos, and so now we have videos that problem solve through some of those common barriers to implementation. So the overall findings were really very positive from the staff who participated. They felt that the program was beneficial as it encouraged a positive mealtime environment. Again, the administrators really valued that free in-service hours that the staff received to improve processes in their center, to complete multiple times each day, breakfast, lunch, snack. These are common challenging times around feeding if that is a problem for you in your center. Teachers also reported feeling really successful in utilizing the responsive feeding practices in their classroom and getting to practice, and then hearing the kids get to also practice what they learned through the peer modeling and then also the adult modeling. Teachers also reported feeling like they would continue to use the materials well beyond the intervention, and that they would incorporate some of the practices into their handbooks and school policies. So after the center intervention was completed, there was really kind of a gap that we noted around family childcare homes. And as we went to conferences to present, people were saying, well, what about family childcare homes? So the intervention was adapted so that there were some resources and materials that became more available for home providers as well. Really, that was born out of their desire to do what's best for children, and then also just to get the materials in a way that's more responsive to sort of the feeding environment that exists within a home space. So although the materials were adapted, there were a little bit more challenges that came up when we provided who received evaluation from the home providers. So really, some of their feedback were that infants and older children are all together in one meal time. And so the provider had to be doing many different things, feeding maybe totally different foods to the infant than they would the older children, or bottle feeding. And so that didn't have them free up as much of their time to sit down and model some of those eating practices, because they had those multiple roles during meal times. Often there was a lack of space for the provider to sit with children and role model. And then there was some concern about just the children making messes in the family childcare home. And so those are all valid things. But what they did find of note and of value is really those responsive feeding practices, and how they were able to do that maybe at snack time when the infants were sleeping and they only had the preschool children available to contend with. And so those were really helpful, even still within that family home environment. So overall, the findings from the evaluation of the Eat Family Style Dining pilot project really was that there was successful implementation of the responsive feeding practices in both types of childcare centers, both programs and homes. The EAT program did support improvement in children's dietary intake in both settings, both a willingness to try new foods and the ability to increase involvement in mealtime selections. And then the program and policy efforts should consider definitely the setting in which the Eat Family Style is being implemented, because there are definitely different facilitators and barriers in implementing family style in any childcare setting, and that can be center to center or home to home. And although we didn't really dig into any of the resources that are part of Eat Family Style, I would encourage you to use this QR code and scan that, and then visit the UNL website where you can view the Eat Family Style program resources. There are probably 40 videos available. So you would be able to kind of dig into all of the resources that are available on the program website. And it was during 2020, there was a lot of expansion around family style dining and responsive feeding practices for parents to use at home, since everyone was eating at home. So you'll also know notice quite a bit of resources around that as well, which might be helpful for parents. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jessie. So you can also find many of Nebraska's resources on the Institute of Child Nutrition's Child Nutrition Sharing site, which is also known as the CNSS. It is an online information center providing child nutrition programs with a means for sharing effective resources related to program operations. The CNSS is a centralized location to share knowledge and resources developed at the local or state level. Child nutrition program operators, state agencies, allied organizations, and industry partners can submit their free child nutrition program resources and training materials for inclusion on the Child Nutrition Sharing site. It includes resource guides, tip sheets, posters, training materials, webinars, videos, and much more on a variety of child nutrition program topics that you can find on that website. These types of resources can also be submitted to this site using the Child Nutrition Program Resource Submission Form found on the homepage of that CNS site. All right, and thank you all. That concludes the informational portion of the webinar today. And we're going to do Q&A in just a little bit. But if you wish to receive a certificate for watching this recorded webinar, you can go to the National CACFP Sponsors Association website at the URL on the slide, which is www.cacfp.org/USDA-webinars to complete the post-webinar practice questions and then receive a certificate. The certificates may be sent a few days after completing the questions. And if you are a registered dietitian nutritionist, continuing professional education units have also been approved from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics Commission on Dietetic Registration, and certificates are available upon request. So please go ahead and email us at teamnutrition@usda.gov. And now we're going to answer a few questions in the few minutes we have left that you all sent in during registration of the webinar. So let's see here. Here's our first question. And Jill, I'm going to send this to you. If you guys can hop on, Jill and Jesse, go ahead and turn your cameras on. So how do we implement special diets into our family style meal service?
Great, thanks, Katie. That's a really good question. So a child may have special dietary needs due to a disability, including a food allergy, which may require a meal modification. CACFP operators are required to make modifications to meals or meal service to accommodate disabilities, including food allergies. If the meal modification cannot be made within the meal pattern requirements, such as substituting, if somebody was allergic to strawberries, substituting an orange for strawberries, you would need to ask the parent or the guardian for a signed medical statement to keep on file in a secure location at your site. However, if you have a child that can only eat certain foods, for example, gluten-free foods, you will want to consider the risk of cross-contact during meal service with things such as serving spoons and tongs. It may be safer to have their full meal pre-plated to ensure that cross-contact does not occur. If they're able to drink milk, they could still pour and pass the pitcher of milk as part of the family style meals. Also, for more information on this subject, be sure to check out the Family Style Meal Service Operator Booklet, which does answer the question, how do I accommodate special dietary needs? And I want to put a plug in that you should always check with the parents and guardians, as well as following your site and the child's food allergy plan, an individualized education program, or 504 plan, if one is there, about any necessary meal modifications before preparing and serving the meal. So I hope that helps answer that question. It's definitely one that we get often in regards to family style meal service.
Yes, thanks, Jill. So we have time. I'm going to do, I think we have time for about 2 more questions here. So this next one I'll go ahead and take, and it's about pouring of milk. So this person asked, does the child need the whole component of the milk in the glass, or is it okay for the child to pour what they want? So the child can pour what they want. While you must provide the full portion of each meal component for every child seated at the table in those serving bowls, serving plates, and pitchers, but a child does not need to put the food on their plate or pour milk in their cup. Children are also not required to eat the full portion of the food or drink all of their milk for that meal or snack to be reimbursable. So each meal component, and in this case, that fluid milk, must be offered to each child at the table, but they do not need to take the full portion. And then this last question here is for Jesse. So what is the target audience for the EAT program videos?
So the target audience are for childcare providers working with children aged 2 through 5. And then that's the guidebook that is provided on some of the QR code links that Katie mentioned are specifically for centers with children aged 2 through 5. But if you go to the link I provided, you'll find there's additional resources for younger children as well as family homes.
Great, thanks, Jesse. All right, so that's all we have time for today, but please go ahead and check out the Family Style Meal Service resources that we mentioned today, both on the Team Nutrition site as well as Nebraska's site and then ICN Child Nutrition Sharing site. Hopefully it gives you ideas and tools and resources to train your own staff on Family Style Meal Service. And Team Nutrition is currently exploring printing these resources, but they're currently unavailable in print. But feel free to download and use them as you wish. Thank you all for your time today. We appreciate it.